The moment Ethan Pierce realized he'd wasted 2 hours waiting for a woman who would never show, he felt nothing. Not disappointment, not anger. Just the familiar numbness that had become his constant companion since the accident that took his sister 3 years ago. The empty chair across from him at Marcello's, the city's most exclusive Italian restaurant, seemed to mock him with its vacancy, a perfect metaphor for the hollow space where his heart used to be. He was reaching for his phone to leave when she stumbled into his booth. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The girl was breathless, her cheeks flushed pink from running, her second-hand coat dripping with rain she'd clearly sprinted through. She slid into the seat opposite him before he could protest, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. "Please, just for a minute." "I promise I'll explain." Ethan's first instinct was to call security. He didn't do chaos, didn't do messy, and this girl was both. Her dark hair had escaped whatever bun she'd attempted that morning. Her glasses were fogged and slightly crooked, and she was gripping a worn canvas bag like it contained everything she owned. Knowing the neighborhood she'd probably run from, it very well might. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the genuine terror in her brown eyes. Maybe it was the way her hands trembled as she tried to smooth down her hair. Or maybe, somewhere deep in the frost-covered wasteland of his chest, something flickered to life for the first time in years. "1 minute," he heard himself say. Her shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." "God, thank you." She glanced back toward the entrance, where a heavy-set man in an expensive but tasteless suit was scanning the restaurant with predatory eyes. She ducked her head lower. "That's my landlord's son. He's been persistent about going out with me. I just needed somewhere he wouldn't follow." Ethan followed her gaze. The man looked exactly like what he was, entitled aggressive, used to getting what he wanted. Ethan had spent enough time in boardrooms to recognize the type. "He won't come here. Tables reserved under my name. They won't let him pass the host stand." She turned back to him and for the first time really looked at him. He watched her take in the custom Tom Ford suit, the Patek Philippe watch, the kind of grooming that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh no. "You're on a date. I've completely ruined your date. I should go. She's not coming." The words came out more bitter than he intended. "Hasn't for the past 2 hours. So technically you're improving the evening." A small smile tugged at her lips, transforming her whole face. "Well, when you put it that way, I'm basically doing charity work." Despite everything, despite the armor he'd carefully constructed around himself, despite his explicit instructions to his assistant to never set him up again, despite the fact that this girl had literally crashed into his life uninvited, Ethan felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward. "I'm Maya," she said, extending a hand that bore the calluses of hard work. "Maya Santos, professional date crasher and apparently charity worker." He took her hand. It was small, warm, and completely without pretense. "Ethan Pierce, professional stood-up date and apparently safe harbor." They sat in silence for a moment, Maya's eyes still occasionally darting toward the entrance. The maitre d' appeared at Ethan's elbow, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes questioning. Ethan could see the calculation happening. This girl didn't belong here, didn't fit the usual profile of women he dated, was clearly out of her element. "The lady will be staying," Ethan said firmly. "We'll have 2 of the Barolo and the tasting menu." "Sir, that's the 8-course. "I'm aware of what I ordered, Marcus." Maya's eyes went wide. "Oh no, I can't possibly. That's got to cost. I really should just go." "You crashed my already crashed date, and now you're going to insult me by refusing to eat?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, channeling every ounce of the commanding presence that had built him a billion-dollar empire by 35. "That's poor form, Miss Santos." She bit her lip, clearly torn between pride and what was probably genuine hunger. He'd seen enough struggling artists and entrepreneurs in his investment meetings to recognize the look. "I don't accept charity." "Good, neither do I, but I do believe in fair exchange." He leaned back, studying her. "I was about to spend the evening alone, probably working, definitely not enjoying this reservation that took my assistant 3 months to secure. You provide me with conversation for the next 2 hours. Save me from that fate, and we'll call it even." "That's not even remotely even." "Then you're welcome to negotiate." "You look like someone who knows how to negotiate." That earned him another smile, bigger this time. Fine, but I'm picking up dessert. Dessert's included in the tasting menu. Then I'm buying you coffee after. I own a coffee company. Then I'm making you coffee. I make excellent coffee. And just like that, the deal was struck. Over the next 2 hours, Ethan learned more about Maya Santos than he'd learned about anyone in years. She was 26, worked 3 jobs, waitress at a diner, night shift at a hospital as a receptionist, and weekends at a literacy center teaching adults to read. She lived in a 4th-floor walk-up in the cheapest part of town. Sent most of her money back to her mother in the Philippines, who was raising her younger siblings and was studying for her nursing, degree 1 class at a time, because that's all she could afford. She told him all of this without a trace of self-pity, laughing about the time the diner's coffee machine exploded during the breakfast rush, getting teary-eyed when she described a 70-year-old student who'd just read his first full book. She asked him about his work. He was deliberately vague, just saying he worked in finance, and actually listened to his answers, asking follow-up questions that showed she was genuinely interested, not just being polite. She didn't recognize him. In a city where his face was on magazine covers and business news segments, where women pursued him for his wealth and connections, Maya Santos had absolutely no idea who he was. It was the most refreshing conversation he'd had in years. Why nursing? He asked as their 6th course arrived, something delicate and artistic that probably took the chef an hour to plate. Her expression softened. My dad died when I was 12. Heart attack! The nurse who stayed with us that night. She didn't have to. Her shift was over. But she held my mother while she cried, explained everything to us kids, made sure we ate something. She was this anchor in the worst moment of our lives. Maya looked down at her hands. I want to be that for someone. That person who shows up, who stays, who makes the unbearable just a little bit more bearable. Ethan felt something crack inside him. My sister died 3 years ago, he heard himself say, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Car accident. I was supposed to pick her up from the airport, but I had a meeting I thought was important. She took a cab instead. The cab driver fell asleep at the wheel. Maya's hand covered his on the table. I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry. No one knows what to do with it, though. So they just stop. Stop calling, stop asking, stop seeing you as anything but the guy whose sister died. He looked at her hand on his, small, warm, alive. I haven't talked about her in 2 years. What was her name? Sarah. She was 23, studying environmental law, wanted to save the world. He smiled despite the ache in his chest. She would have liked you. She was always bringing home strays, people, animals, causes. Drove me crazy. Tell me about her, Maya said simply. I want to know? So he did. He told her about Sarah's terrible, singing voice and her habit of making up words when she couldn't. Remember lyrics. About how she'd painted a mural on his office wall when he first started his company, a sunrise over mountains, because she said he needed to remember there was more to life than profit margins. About the way she'd call him at midnight with random questions like, do you think fish get thirsty? Just because she knew he'd still be working and needed the distraction. By the time dessert arrived, Ethan realized he was smiling, actually smiling. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for 3 years felt lighter. Thank you, he said quietly, for listening, for not treating it like a problem to solve. Grief isn't a problem, Maya said. It's love with nowhere to go. The fact that it still hurts means you still love her. That's not something to fix. Later, as they stood outside the restaurant under the awning watching the rain, Ethan didn't want the evening to end. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this. Present. This alive. Let me get you a car, he said. It's late. I can take the bus. Maya, please. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay, thank you. As they waited for his driver, she turned to him. Can I ask you something? And will you answer honestly? I'll try. Are you happy? The question hit him like a physical blow. I'm successful. That's not what I asked. He looked at this girl, this extraordinary, kind, selfless girl who worked 3 jobs and still found time to teach strangers, to read, and found he couldn't lie to her. No, I'm not. Why not? Because I don't let myself be. Because happiness feels like betrayal when Sarah doesn't get to be happy anymore. Because it's easier to feel nothing than to risk feeling everything. Maya reached up and adjusted his tie. A surprisingly intimate gesture that felt completely natural. Your sister painted you a sunrise. She wanted you to remember there's more to life. Do you really think she'd want you to live like this? In the dark? Before he could answer, his driver pulled up. Maya started toward the car, but Ethan caught her hand. Have dinner with me again. A real dinner, not as a business transaction. She hesitated. I don't think we live in the same world, Ethan. Maybe that's exactly why we should try. She smiled, squeezed his hand, and got in the car. You know where to find me. 4th floor walk-up, cheapest part of town. I make excellent coffee, remember? He watched the car disappear into the rainy night, still feeling the warmth of her hand in his. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan Pierce went home and didn't work. He sat in front of Sarah's mural, the one he'd been meaning to paint over, the one his decorator kept suggesting he replace, and really looked at it. A sunrise over mountains, a reminder that there was more to life. The next morning, he showed up at Maya's building with 2 coffees from the shop next to her diner. She opened the door in scrubs, clearly about to leave for her hospital shift, her eyes widening in surprise. You came, she breathed.